Growing up in the slums, poverty was a constant companion, whispering in every shadow and lurking in every corner. The grime of our existence was made bearable only by the small glimmers of hope my family and faith could provide. We were deeply religious, clinging to our beliefs as if they could save us from the brutal reality we faced every day. My younger brother, Samuel, was my beacon of light in this dark world. His laughter could chase away the darkness, even if only for a moment. And then it happened. I was in a small rundown church that served as our sanctuary, kneeling in prayer. The flickering candles cast long wavering shadows on the walls, and the musty scent of incense filled the air. I was praying for guidance, for strength to keep going, despite our dire circumstances. Suddenly, the church door creaked open, and the neighbour burst in, her face ashen and eyes wide with horror. She called my name, her voice trembling.
"Alex, come quickly,"
she said, barely able to get her words out.
"It's Samuel."
Her tone sent a chill down my spine. I followed her through the narrow, dirty streets, my heart pounding in my chest. When we arrived at the alley, I saw a small crowd gathered. They parted as I approached, revealing Samuel's lifeless body. He was lying in a pool of his blood. His eyes were open, staring blankly at the sky, and his once vibrant face was now pale and lifeless. The sight broke something inside me. A fissure opened in my soul, a crack that would never fully heal. I fell to my knees, screaming his name, but no sound could bring him back. The world around me faded, and all I could see was Samuel's lifeless form. Life, I realized in this moment, was brutally unforgiving. Our prayers often went unanswered, and the reality was that no amount of faith could save us from the harshness of this world. With Samuel gone, I was left alone in a world that had already taken too much from me. Every corner of our tiny apartment seemed to echo with his absence. My parents, unable to cope with the grief, retreated further into their own worlds, leaving me to fend for myself. I could no longer find solace in the church that had once given me strength. My faith, once unshakable, now felt like a cruel joke. Locals whispered about Samuel's death, their voices hushed and fearful.
"It was the Coffin Cheaters gang. I heard it was a new member trying to prove his worth. It is such a shame. Samuel was just in the wrong place at the wrong time."
These words echoed in my mind, feeding the growing rage inside me. If being good hadn't saved Sam, then what the fuck was the point? I realized that survival in this brutal world required a different approach. If life operated in shades of grey, then so would I. I needed a way out, and I was willing to embrace the darkness to find it. Desperation pushed me to the edge, and I decided the best way to get revenge and money would be to raid the Coffin Cheater's house. The thought of stealing from those who traded in human misery seemed almost poetic, and a twisted form of justice for Sam. It wasn't just about the money, it was about striking back at the world that had taken so much from me. In the early hours of the morning, I broke into their den. The house was a decrepit structure, a fitting lair for those who thrived in the suffering of others. My heart pounded as I moved through the darkened rooms, my senses heightened with adrenaline and fear. The Coffin Cheaters were sprawled out, either asleep or in drug-induced stupors. I felt no pity, only a cold, calculating determination. I took my blade out. One by one, I ended their lives. The sounds of their laboured breathing and occasional grunts were soon replaced by silence. My actions were swift and brutal, each kill a release of pent-up rage. I left no witnesses, ensuring that my vengeance would be complete and untraceable. I ransacked the place, finding stashes of money and drugs hidden in various nooks and crannies. The amount of cash was staggering, more than I'd ever seen in my entire life. I stuffed it all into a bag, my hands shaking with a mixture of exhilaration and fear. Before leaving, I doused the place in gasoline. I struck a match, and I watched the flames begin to consume the house. The fire roared to life, casting an eerie glow in the pre-dawn darkness. The smoke billowed into the sky. a signal of my retribution. As I walked away, the heat of the fire warming my back, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. With the stolen funds, I rented a small apartment and I bought a computer. The world of the internet opened up before me, and it was there that I discovered the dark web. Among the murky depths of illicit markets, one name stood out: MurderCoin. It was a forum for hiring hitmen, a place where death had a price. Curiosity and desperation. They were the twin devils in my ear. They lured me deeper into the shadowy world of the MurderCoin forums. I scrolled through endless threads, my eyes scanning for opportunity among the depravity. The market was a dark bazaar of death, where human lives were traded like commodities, and I was another anonymous user among the faceless masses. One night, my fingers trembled with a mix of excitement and dread. I decided to put up an ad. My heart raced as I typed out the details, wondering if anyone would take the bait. "Experienced hitman for hire," I wrote, masking my inexperience with bold claims. I hit post and I waited. The seconds stretched into eternity. To my astonishment, replies began to trickle in. Offers, negotiations, and requests filled my inbox, each one more chilling than the last. I felt a thrill I hadn't known before, a kind of power. My first job was a simple one, a cheating spouse to be dealt with. The pay was decent and the risk seemed minimal. That initial job was a gateway, a bloody baptism that sealed my fate. The hit went smoothly, target dispatched with cold efficiency. I felt a strange sensation as I collected my payment in the form of digital currency. The MurderCoin balance in my account was growing. What followed was a dark odyssey through the ever-evolving landscape of the forum. Over the next few years, I carved out a reputation, my skills honed with each new contract. The forum itself transformed, growing from a niche community into a sprawling network of deft dealers and clients. New features were added, user interfaces improved, and security tightened. It was a thriving ecosystem of murder, and I was one of its predators. I learned to navigate the complexities of trade, from setting up encrypted communications to laundering the digital currency. Each job was a study in human nature, revealing the depths of depravity and desperation people could sink to. I took contracts from jealous lovers, vengeful business partners, and even those seeking to eliminate political rivals. No target was too high profile, no job too morally reprehensible. The adrenaline rush became my addiction. I thrived in the high-stakes game, each hit a test of my cunning and ruthlessness. I watched the forum grow, and my reputation with it. The jobs became more complex, the pay more substantial, but as MurderCoin's population surged, so did the number of hitmen. Competition grew fierce, and jobs became scarcer. In response, I adapted. I began hiring new hitmen and sending them on jobs, ensuring they wouldn't survive to compete with me. My first target was a drug dealer in the city. I followed the drug dealer, meticulously setting up wireless cameras to monitor his every move. The cameras were hidden in strategic locations, nestled among the bricks of buildings, camouflaged in trees, and even disguised as ordinary trash. I studied his routines, noting his habits, his patterns, and his vulnerabilities. The drug dealer was cautious, but not cautious enough. Every day, he followed the same route, visited the same spots, and met the same people. It was only a matter of time before I found the perfect moment to strike. When the time came, I delved into the depths of the MurderCoin forums, searching for a hitman to carry out the dirty work. I filtered through user reviews, profiles, and past job performances. I needed someone expendable, a rookie with only a few jobs under his belt. The chosen hitman had a handful of successful contracts, enough to suggest he could handle the task, but his inexperience was evident. He was eager to prove himself, and that made him perfect for my plan. I provided the rookie hitman with all necessary details: the dealer's schedule, his car, his favorite haunts, I left nothing to chance. As I watched through the live feeds from my hidden cameras, I saw the hitman pull up in a beaten up sedan, the engine rattling ominously. The drug dealer emerged from the convenience store, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. The hitman accelerated, the car launching forward. The drive-by was sloppy, the shots erratic. Bullets sprayed wildly, shattering glass and striking brick walls. The drug dealer barely had time to react before he crumpled to the ground. It was messy, but effective. The rookie had done his job, albeit clumsily. As chaos erupted on the streets, I switched the feed from my drone. The sleek, silent machine hovered above, tracking the hitman's escape. He drove erratically, panic evident in his every movement. The drone followed him to a nearby cafe where he hastily parked and rushed inside, seeking refuge in the crowded establishment. I waited, biding my time. The hitman eventually emerged, a cup of coffee in hand, trying to steady his nerves. He walked towards his car, unaware that his life was about to end. As he reached for the door, I pulled up next to him. My heart pounded with anticipation, but my hands were steady, and as I raised that silent pistol, the hitman glanced up, his eyes widening with realization. It was too late. I fired twice, muffled shots barely audible over the ambient noise of the city. The hitman slumped against his car, his coffee spilling onto the pavement, mingled with his blood. I drove off calmly, the silencer still warm in my hand. I left no trace, no evidence to tie the events together. The rookie hitman was now just another casualty in the dangerous game that I played. As I watched the news reports later that night, I felt a cold satisfaction. The drug dealer was gone and the hitman was eliminated. It was a perfect execution of a plan that kept my hands clean and my identity safe. My next target was a reporter known for posting fake news. My loathing for this man was intense, driving me to meticulously plan every detail of this operation. I set up hidden cameras around the house, their lenses capturing every angle, waiting just for the right moment. From a street over, I watched and I waited, my nerves taut like a coiled spring. The night was thick with tension, each second dragging on as I stared at the live feed. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the screen, a figure clad in black, stealthy and determined. The hitman had arrived. He crept towards the house, each step calculated and silent. My heart pounded and the adrenaline surged as I readied myself. The hitman reached the door, his hand slipping into his coat, undoubtedly reaching for a weapon that would silence the reporter forever. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, and without a second's hesitation, I bolted from my hiding spot, my sudden appearance leaving him stunned. Before he could react, I was upon him. The struggle was brief but fierce, my movements driven by a combination of rage and precision. In one swift motion, I drew my blade and I slit his throat, the sharp edge slicing through his flesh and silencing him before he could even utter a sound. I dragged his lifeless body away, the reporter inside blissfully unaware of how close he had come to death. As I stood there, panting and covered in the hitman's blood, the reality of what I had done settled over me. The immediate threat was eliminated. I then went into his house and I killed that reporter. You know why? Because fuck that guy. With each successful elimination, I found myself getting more work. My reputation grew and so did my confidence, but with every kill, I felt a part of my humanity slip away. The once faint whispers of my conscience were now drowned out by the roar of my bloodlust. The forums buzzed with speculation and fear. Another hitman had vanished and another job completed with ruthless efficiency. My reputation grew, and with it, my sense of invincibility. I'd become a ghost, a spectre in the dark world of Murdercoin, untouchable and unseen. One fateful night, I waited in a dimly lit warehouse. My latest target, a female assassin. The air was thick with tension, and every sound seemed to amplify the eerie silence. I followed her into the building, my heart racing with anticipation and my senses on high alert. She moved with the grace of a predator, her movements silent and deadly. I kept distance, my eyes locked on her every move, and as I closed in, an odd sensation washed over me. It started as a tingling in my extremities and it quickly escalated into a deep, consuming weakness, as if something was draining me. Panic set in, my vision blurred, my legs felt like lead. Desperation clawed at me as I tried to crawl away, my strength waning with every passing second. Suddenly, a group of men stepped into view, their presence casting a dark shadow over my fading consciousness. Among them stood two imposing figures. A man with what appeared to be blue scars on his face glared at me, and the other was a bold guy with dark eyes. He looked and carried himself like a figure of authority and menace. His cold, calculating eyes bored into mine, and a cruel smile played on his lips.
I've noticed the hitman ranks decreasing, so I looked into it. I know what you've been doing. You've been fucking up my business.
His words were a knife to my gut. I realized this was none other than the kingpin of Murdercoin himself, Black Halo, a man whose very name struck fear into the hearts of most hardened criminals. He had a look of disdain on his face, as if I was a mere insect to be crushed under his foot.
You're a soulless dog that needs to be put down.
He cocked his gun, the metallic click echoing through the warehouse. I tried to muster the strength to speak, to plead, to fight, but it was useless. My body betrayed me, every muscle paralyzed by the mysterious force that had sapped my strength. The last thing I saw was the barrel of the gun pointed at my head, its cold hard steel glinting in the dim light. Time seemed to slow down, each second stretching into eternity. The owner's finger tightened on the trigger and the deafening shot rang out. Everything went black. In that moment of darkness, as my consciousness slipped away, I thought of Icarus and the need for moderation and balance. Too late. Damn it. Hi folks, that was part 3 of my Murdercoin series. If this one gets a bit more traction, I might re-record part 1 and part 2 using my own narration rather than the AI. And one more thing, something to keep in mind, all these stories are original. You won't find them on any other person's YouTube channel or somewhere on the internet. It's basically myself and a couple of friends writing these stories. I'm also working on a podcast. So until then, take care and have a nice night.